Hello and welcome to our second evening of celebration of the very best the gaming industry has to offer. You are, of course, watching Beasts of War's 2014 Annual Gaming Awards. In this show tonight, we're going to be looking at two categories. We're going to be looking at accessories, which I'm really looking forward to because, accessories, they are what completely set our gaming world on fire. That's where we start to get our terrain.
All our little gaming aids.
Lasers. You've got to get me some lasers. So that's coming up later in the show. However, we're also going to be talking about fantasy. This is another one of the big genre categories. And 2014 has seen a real resurgence of fantasy.
Oh, yes. In a big way. It had kind of died out for a while, I thought. But...
Well, I did feel it over the last few years that fantasy was starting to get quite overshadowed by the science fiction side of the house, with all of the real developments that were taking place within science fiction. But 2014, as we will see, has been a real, den of development in terms of the fantasy genre. Anyway, to get on with the show, this is our first category. The nominations for Best Fantasy Game of 2014 are Fantasy Flight, Game of Thrones, Games Workshop, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, Megacon Games, Myth, Mears Miniatures, Darklands, Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, GCT Studios, Bushido, Paizo, Pathfinder role-playing game, Privateer Press, Hordes and War Machine, Mantic Games, Kings of War, Games Workshop, The Hobbit strategy battle game. So there we have it, guys. That is our nominations for the fantasy category.
The big names are all there.
It's a real mixed bag. Again, we have the card games in there, we have RPGs in there, we have the board games in there, and we have the war games in there. Like I said, we in last night's show, we went for these genre categories because we feel the games are good enough to stand up to one another now. And I think, once again, we didn't get a category that was overrun with any particular type of game.
I think these games are definitely strong enough to stand on their own. We've got some fantastic ones in the nominees there.
Yeah.
Now, looking back over 2014, as we'd said at the start of the show, we're starting to see a real kind of resurgence in fantasy. And I think things are really looking up for 2015.
It's like we said earlier, there was a feeling that fantasy was getting overshadowed by science fiction, which was a real shame, because for many of us, fantasy was our start in gaming. It was our first one.
You couldn't be more right. In fact, I was very nearly at one point going to introduce the show by saying we're going to explore the realm of fantasy, which for us all was the beginning point of our journey into gaming. But the reality is it wasn't the beginning point. That honor lies with historical, which we're going to be talking about tomorrow night. But historical aside, for many of us, we had our entry point were games like Dungeons and Dragons and Hero Quest. So certainly, it may not have been the official starting point, but it was certainly, I would say, the most influential of any of the genres in getting our industry up and running. And I think it's great. I want to talk about some of the highlights of this year. We have to talk about the start of the year, where we had the Guild Ball Kickstarter.
Oh, yes. What a game.
Guild Ball is superb. I'm looking forward to next year. Who knows, we might even see Guild Ball enter in as a nomination next year. Who knows? Yeah. But Guild Ball is a fabulous, fabulous fantasy sports game that, it's not played out on a board game. It's played out with a tape measure. It just oozes with flair.
It's got a lot of individual character to it, and manages to be fantasy without depending on usual fantasy tropes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and the concept art for it and the actual miniature sculpts are fantastic.
Oh, they couldn't be better. They are that good. Like I said, I think it has the potential to be a rising star. Only time will tell on that one. The big news in around July time, around Gen Con, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, every man and his dog has been looking forward to this one. A lot of people had a lot of problems with 4th edition. 4th edition started to feel more like miniature combat game.
Yeah. It was more of a skirmish game, I felt, rather than an RPG.
It started to lose a lot of what had made Dungeons and Dragons quite special. Most importantly, that aspect of storytelling. Good dungeon masters, well, you would never have noticed the difference. But for us mere mortals playing the game as the rules were written, it started to feel a little bit dry.
Now, you see, there was an interesting thing about it because 4th edition, unfortunately, was my introduction to D&D. And I did enjoy it, fair enough. So I was a bit nervous about a new edition coming out. Played 5th edition and found out what I'd been missing.
It is
such a good game.
Whenever you go into a game without the preconception of the previous generations, you will enjoy it regardless.
Well, that's true. That's true. But I think that anybody that's been playing 4th edition, you have to have a go at 5th edition. Romain, one of our house painters, was posting recently about his experience of 5th edition, and it completely revitalized the game for him. It's all driven by storytelling. I think Wizards of the Coast may well have nailed it with this edition. Moving on towards the end of the year, we had the Dungeon Saga Kickstarter from Mantic.
Yeah, this is one you were excited about because it was dragging you right back to your childhood.
This is my boyhood dreams revisited. I love dungeon crawlers, and for me, I'm getting the hair on the back of my neck standing up thinking about it. Playing a dungeon crawler late in the evening with my brother and some friends, with Metallica's Master of Puppets playing in the background.
I just see you screaming Leroy Jenkins and running for that door.
Well, it's one of the beauties of the dungeon crawler is that, yes, you do have to work as part of the party. However,
if you want to have fun and just go off on your own,
it's hard to resist, I gotta say. It was a fabulous Kickstarter from Mantic. Who knows what we will see in 2015 as a result of that. I know we're all very keen and very eager to see what the product is that they come up with. Then, the final part of the year.
Okay.
There's only one thing to be talked about in the final part of the year in the fantasy genre, and that had to be the Warhammer Fantasy End.
Yes, the biggest thing to happen in Warhammer Fantasy since the Storm of Chaos campaign.
Which was a long time ago.
Quite a long time ago, yes. And this time, it's actually affecting the world. It's stuff that is going to stick. The Storm of Chaos has actually been rendered non-canon by it.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
This couldn't be bigger. This in many ways is make or break for fantasy. The guys in the studio have really torn up the rules. And I don't mean as in the rules, but I mean they've torn up the rules of how Games Workshop developed that game over the last number of years. They have decided to do something very, very different. And we're now getting to the stage where we're going to see, or at least start seeing, what they have in store for that. So 2015 is going to be a huge year for Warhammer Fantasy. We have heard that it is now going to be a skirmish game that scales up.
Yeah.
So I'm also hearing
2015 is going to be the year to see whether it is going to work or not.
Well, I'm also hearing that as well as we will probably see some changes to some armies, but we may well see new armies altogether.
Really?
We will most certainly start to see a number of, I want to use the word characters, but I don't mean characters in the game sense, but characters in the background sense. Some that have already been mentioned in the background, and some that may well be completely new.
This could be very interesting.
So 2015 is looking up to be one hell of a year for the fantasy genre. Gentlemen, if you'll allow me, I'm going to go and announce the finalists. So here we have it, what we've dubbed the Fair Lady category, because she was our first love after all. It is, of course, Best Fantasy Game. We had 10 nominees. Unfortunately, they can't all win it. So here are our 4 finalists. Games Workshop, Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. Privateer Press, Hordes and War Machine. Mantic Games, Kings of War. Well, that's our 4 finalists. All that's left now is to tune in to finals night to see who wins it. In the meantime, let's move on to the next category. The nominations for Best Accessory of 2014 are Vallejo, Game Air. Frontline, Megamat and Fatman. Battle Systems, Sci-Fi Terrain. Classcraft, Hack Islam Terrain. Foreground, Fabled Realms. Battle Foam, Hack Mole. Games Workshop, Technical Paints. War Painter, Flockbox. Army Painter, Laserline. Mantic Games, Battle Zones. Ichiban Studio, Proline Brushes. So welcome back. I'm joined by Justin and Lloyd. There you have it, gentlemen. That is the nominees for Best Accessory.
And what a list of nominees that is.
It's quite a list. You know, when you look down the list, we have terrain in there, we have storage in there, we have paints in there.
We have paint brushes.
We have paint brushes in there, and we also have tools like the laser line and stuff in there. It's been quite a year for accessories. We are seeing... Let's talk about terrain for a little while, okay? You know, we've talked on and off about how materials and I'm going to call it material science.
Material science. I think we need Killian in the studio if you're talking science.
Well, material science is really starting to have an impact on us as a hobby. Like, what is one of the key problems for any gamer?
Colouring stuff in would be one.
Name another one.
Basically, building cool buildings from scratch.
Time.
And another one. One last one. Time.
Are we going to get it?
Time and space. I told you this was going to get all sciencey. It's called space-time, baby. Anyway, think about it now, right? We have reached the stage where machinery and print resolutions have got to the stage where we can just roll out gaming mats. Nice high-resolution gaming mats on a kind of like a neoprene surf suit type material or some kind of vinyl. You know, we still love making gaming tables, but we're getting very near the stage that for people that don't have space, you just have rolled up high-resolution, beautiful gaming mats.
Yeah, you can lay out a city board and just start planting terrain on top.
Well, talking of the terrain, you know, we're starting to see where the guys in the laser cut industry are beginning to take it. You know, this year we moved from those wooden bog standard buildings,
wood coloured bog standard buildings,
to the guys at Foreground and other places now doing pre-coloured. And there's rumblings that we could be reaching the stage now where we could even see pre-textured. So it actually is print
that I want to see. That I really
well, actually printed textures.
Actual printed
like
textures.
Walls and things, I guess.
Well, I've seen this even recently in the children's toy market. And remember, our market is big, it's special, but it's not the biggest. So a lot of the technologies that feed down to us actually come from industries like the toy industry.
Which is great because the toy industry has to capture people's attention on the shelf, so they drive all that stuff.
Absolutely. Not only, but they also drive safety and robustness, which is great for us as gamers. I'll give you an example. I saw a castle set recently that was all laser cut, and it had the textures and all printed directly on it. You couldn't pick them off. It was and it was a beautiful looking castle. It was a little cartoony, but that's a design issue, not a technical issue.
Fair enough.
So this is the stuff that's now going to start making its way down the pipeline. A lot of this stuff, all we wait for is the cost levels to get to a stage where it's manageable.
Yeah, so suddenly the research cost of making this tech has been made. Now this technology begins to become cheaper because now we're not trying to make our money back.
And we've seen other materials and stuff being used to allow us to get curves and stuff in our terrain as well, rather than just straights all the time.
Well, this is another great thing. It's while all of the industry, not all the industry, while a lot of the industry has been looking at the laser cut side of things, you've of course had companies like Plascraft who've been exploring a different kind of material altogether, which has very different properties. That kind of, I think I'm going to call it a kind of like a PVC, but it is a form of plastic that is die cut.
Yeah, and it's really flexible to get those nice rounds.
You get curves, and that's why you end up with products like that Hack Islam set that is in the nominations list.
And they've got the embossing effect rather than just laser cut lines.
Yeah, then what you also get is some companies have went through the hard plastic route and went for pure modular systems, which let you build anything you can imagine.
Again, yeah, absolutely correct. And this is one of the things that we're looking forward to now for 2015, when Mantic take Dead Zone back to Kickstarter to do not only all the additional miniatures, but also a huge range of add-on terrain pieces that take that modular terrain system, the battle zone system that they've
and
built,
really flesh it out.
is going to take it to that next level.
Yeah.
This is stuff.
We can't wait for that.
We were only dreaming of this stuff, 2-3 years ago, and now, in many ways, we're spoilt for choice in the gaming accessories industry. It's a fabulous time.
We've also been seeing a real growth in the paint industry this year. So we've got stuff for airbrushes and even texture and technical paints coming out.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah, the paint, I suppose the technology behind paint is really, really starting to ramp up. Those technical paints coming out of Games Workshop are fabulous. They're not particularly versatile, but they're technical paints. They're not supposed to be versatile.
Yeah, they have a specific job, a specific role. Here's what you're doing with this pot. Here, do it on your mini. Go nuts.
The likes of blood effects and glow effects. These are things that may well have existed. But to now have them in easy to find, easy to use systems.
It's no longer sort of that locked off secret of the master painters. It's out there for everyone to get.
Yeah, and to have the likes of Angel coming out with sets as well.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Angel and some of his tutorial stuff that he's been doing with the guys at Vallejo have been great this year.
Ramah had a hell of a time sitting here looking through all the paint sets that we had and going, this is amazing and this is great.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Vallejo, because one of the big things that came out of them was the game Air, which was in the nominations. Now, that's the other thing that we're starting to see. Like on Beasts of War now, we've been moving into airbrushing, gradually getting into it, finding our way around.
Step by
step, and feeding back, and then the community feeding back to us. But one of the big bonuses, as I see it, is companies now creating dedicated airbrush paint, where the pigments have been ground down to be
nice
extra fine. The pigment levels are just right, the consistency levels are just right. It just makes airbrushing that much more straightforward for the beginner like ourselves.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Well, we could talk about this all night. Will we get on and see who the actual finalists are?
Yes, I think we will. A category that probably could be considered a box of chocolates. We didn't know what we were going to get, but what we did get was fabulous. But now it comes down to announcing who the 4 finalists are for the Best Accessories category. Vallejo, Game Air. Foreground, Fabled Realms. Battle Systems, Sci-Fi Terrain. Mantic Games, Battle Zones. We'll be back on your screens again tomorrow evening, where we're going to be looking at 2 categories that some of us have been chomping at the bit at.
Oh yeah.
We're going to be looking into Justin's pulp, punk, horror, and weird category.
Well, I'm going to stop you there because we were planning the show, and that category came up, and it was like, who wants to be on this? Everyone's hands went up. But we've had to whittle it down. Not all of us can be in it.
And then after that, we're also going to be looking at the historicals category. And I know that John is chomping at the bit to get into that one.
Well, he's been sitting in his flipping, what is it, a tank helmet? What's the helmet has he been wearing?
Oh no, that's a U.S. Army helmet with tanker goggles.
Oh, with tanker goggles. Of course it is. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you again tomorrow evening.